Hey guys, this is Echo Soundworks, and you're checking out a discussion video on ADSR. So in this video, we're going to be talking about 3 must-have synths for every producer. So just to get the short version out of the way, I would argue that there are no 3 specific synths that every producer must have. I will say that there are 3 types of synths that every producer should have, because having 3 different types of synthesizers makes it easier to get certain types of sounds quicker and faster. And then if you have these 3 types, you should be able to create almost any sound that you want. So let's just dive right in. All right, so the first type of synthesizer that I think every producer should have is a wavetable synth. Think Serum, think Massive, Tone 2 Icarus, Synthmaster 1. They just came out, KV331 Audio came out with their own wavetable synth. There are tons of wavetable synths out there. The reason why I think that is one of the most important categories of synth to own is because you can do things in a wavetable synth that you cannot do in a non-wavetable synth. So for instance, let's take Synth for an example, because we're probably all pretty familiar with that synth. You cannot modulate through a waveform and apply warp modes or bend modes to that sound, right? If you load up a saw wave, it's a saw wave. You can only detune it and then filter it, right? And spread out the voices in unison. But in a synth like Serum or Massive or Tone 2 Icarus, you can actually scan through slight variations in, say, a saw wavetable, right? You cannot get that sound with a synth like Synth. Now, I'm not trying to shit on synths like Synth. I think they're great types of synths, and they're actually one of the other categories in this video. But a wavetable synth can typically allow you to do things that others can't. So I know I'm probably gonna get asked, well, which one's the best one? That's totally up to you and what type of workflow you like, right? Do you use a PC? Do you use a Mac? Are you a visual GUI person? Do you like to use mod matrices? It really just depends. But I would say my 3 favorite wavetable synths are Serum, Massive, and Tone 2 Icarus, in that order. All right, the second type of software synth that you should have in your arsenal should be a virtual analog synth that is emulating a classic synth of yesteryear, whether it's a Moog, a Prophet, a Juno. Some synths kind of emulate all of those. This type of synth is built from the ground up to get a very specific sound, and it supplements a synth like Serum or Massive or Icarus so well. So the types of synths I'm talking about would be like Yuhi Diva, which is incredibly CPU hungry, Monarch by Native Instruments, Synapse the Legend, that's my personal favorite for this type of synth. It's modeled after a Moog Model D, Lush. There's a bunch of these synths out there. Like, they're designed to emulate a certain type of old school sound. And layering like a Moog style bass with a really digital bass from Serum or Icarus or Massive, I think it has some really cool effect in any mix, whether you're doing EDM, pop, hip hop, etc. So if you guys don't have one of those, and most DAWs don't really come with them, like I know Logic kind of comes with one that's pretty basic, but it's not great. If you have that type of synth in your DAW, you're lucky. You can kind of maybe go on to one of the honorable mentions that we're going to talk about later in this video, but definitely look into getting that type of synth if you don't already have it. All right, now the third type of synth that I feel like is a must-have would just be a good, easy to use, subtractive digital sounding synth, right? Now, there's a lot of synths that fall in this category, like Silent, Hive. I would even say like Yuhi Zebra. It's really easy to use once you get going. Maybe even a synth like Dune or Dune 2, which is kind of like a hybrid between a baby wavetable synth and subtractive synth. Just a good sounding subtractive digital synth that isn't primarily a wavetable synth or isn't some emulation of a classic synthesizer. Now, the reason I say that that's what I would say is like the third category in a must-have synth list is because it's easy to get really specific sounds and quick in a synth like Silent or Hive, right? Because you know you're getting the basic waveforms. You're getting a sine, a square, a saw, maybe a couple pulses, some noises, that sort of stuff. And then you have filters and effects and envelopes and LFOs, and that's basically it. You don't have all the things that you get in a synth like Serum or Massive with blend modes, warp modes, wavetable position, all that sort of stuff, right? So now we're going to start to talk about some honorable mentions, because there are a couple different types of synthesis that I didn't touch on that I think should be discussed in this video, because they may replace the last category we just talked about, depending on the type of music you produce. All right, so the honorable mentions would be FM synthesis for sure. If you create really heavy bass music like dubstep or trap, you may want to look into an actual dedicated FM synth, maybe FM8, Tone 2 Nemesis. There's a bunch of really cool FM synths out there. Even Logic comes with a really basic FM synth. I know Ableton Live does as well. So you might have some of these types of synths in your DAW natively, which may kind of push you to go different directions with the ones that you're going to purchase. Now, another honorable mention for me would be definitely a Rompler style synth. Think Nexus or Omnisphere, right? Or maybe even Lethal. There's synths that you can get piano sounds from, pretty passable, okay string sounds from, especially if you're doing hip hop or pop or EDM. You don't need like a 800 million gigabyte string library to fit into a dubstep track, or a trap track. But it's nice to have those different textures, those different options for when you're producing, especially if you're pop or hip hop or even EDM now. So I would say that would be kind of an honorable mention. So if you are kind of like starting out and you're like, well, what synths do I get outside the ones in my DAW? Or maybe you don't like the ones in your DAW, definitely check out a Wavetable synth. Definitely check out a synth that emulates an old school style synth, because you're just not going to get it with like Sylenth or Massive or Serum that easily, or even that well for that matter. And then maybe try to decide, should you get like an FM style synth? Should you get a digital sounding subtractive synth like Sylenth or Hive, just one that's easy to use? Or should you go more with a Rompler to get those other sounds like pianos and strings and maybe a harp, trumpets, brass sounds, all that sort of stuff. Now, once you have those three, you should be able to make almost any sound that you want, or learn how to make almost any sound that you want. And just having those preset libraries on those types of synths, you should be squared and set away. If you guys have any questions or comments, post them up below. Let's get a healthy discussion going here. I'd love to hear your guys' comments on some of your favorite synths. I know Harmer from FL Studio Users is going to come up. I would love to use that synth, but I'm a Mac guy, so I can't. But yeah, let's talk about some of our favorite synths down below and just geek out. Thanks for watching, guys. I will see you next time.